Welcome back. Today we're talking about Muse's third album, Absolution. I've really enjoyed so far going back to Showbiz with its very raw and stripped back style, and Origin of Symmetry, which saw more classical influences into Muse's sound, matching the aggressive tone of Showbiz but sustaining it throughout essentially the entire album. I also really enjoyed buying into the space rock style of Origin of Symmetry. I felt very immersed in that strange world Muse built. It's always been my favourite Muse album. It certainly is at the moment out of Showbiz and Origin of Symmetry. So the question is Absolution better? This is probably the biggest question in Muse fandom. What is the best album? And the question essentially comes down to Origin of Symmetry or this album, Absolution, because let's face it, whilst Black Holes and Revelations is obviously good, it can't really hold a candle to these two albums. Maybe I'll be proved wrong when I get round to reviewing that one. I'm open to changing my mind. But before we get there, we have to assess the quality of the 2003 album Absolution. The first thing to point out immediately is that this album has a much better production than Origin of Symmetry. That is definitely working in this album's favour. For reference, before I started recording this, the version of the album I re-listened to was the original 2003 mix, not the remaster. I'll talk about some extra stuff that the remaster offers at the end of this video, but when it came out, I remember listening to the remastered tracks, and in many cases not really being able to identify much difference. There were some songs like Apocalypse Please, which had a much clearer mix and that kind of stuff, but these are small little touch-ups, not like in Origin of Symmetry, where the remix sounds like an entirely different version of the song in many cases. And speaking of Apocalypse Please, that is the first track. Putting aside its somewhat muddy mix at times, the overall mix on this album and on this song is so much better than Origin of Symmetry. I mean, comparing the quality of sound in Apocalypse Please to Space Dementia, which also has a dramatic piano part, the difference is night and day. The song actually opens with an intro which consists of marching, rhythmic footsteps, and the sound of a person, a general, a military person calling out commands to a marching army. Immediately, the tone of the album that has been set is one with military undertones. We haven't got any clues melodically or harmonically as to what the tone of this album will be yet, as it's simply a rhythmic march. But what we are presented with is that something is approaching. This march is presumably towards us or towards something. And it is not simply one person walking, it is many people, an army on the move. So something is approaching us and something big is approaching us. And because we're using an army, that suggests something specific. What would you need an army to combat? Maybe another army, maybe a monster, maybe an apocalyptic threat. Either way, it is some sort of threat. So what the marching and the rhythm is telling us is that something is approaching, something big is approaching, and something threatening is on its way. Then the piano enters, and we have a separate rhythm line played. The piano is being played on every downbeat, lasting for a full crotchet. And in the background, we still have that marching, oncoming rhythm. So we're hearing those two rhythms at the same time. The actual melody line of the piano chords can be heard in the highest note, which is going from an F sharp down to an F, so a semitone in between those two notes. We talked extensively in Origin of Symmetry about how the semitone evokes drama and tension, further cementing this idea that there is a threat. So F sharp down to F and then down to E flat, back up to F and then F sharp, and it repeats. So what we've done there is we have essentially created a root, second and third shape, where E flat would be our root, even if we're not thinking of it in that way. F would be the minor second and F sharp would be the minor third. So we can think of this as moving through an E flat minor shape. And the first chord that we hear the piano play is an F sharp minor chord. So all of these things are working together to create an ominous tone, one that is scary, one that evokes sadness and tension, and that whatever is causing that is approaching in the rhythm, or we are marching towards it. Either one, but the threat is getting closer to us. Matt's vocals are incredibly dramatic here, which is brilliant. The piano is being played really hard. The dynamics are like triple F. as loud as they can be played. Certainly in the bass notes, that's what it feels like. And the drums have not established a backbeat yet. They have simply been playing the marching rhythm on the toms, or they've been doing these fills in between. We're accentuating the drama, we're building up. And when we hear that backbeat, it's when the vocals move from being very belty in Matt's chest voice into more of his head voice. A gliding and soft vocal delivery as opposed to the dramatic one that he just had. And I think these vocals are very interesting because they juxtapose the drama and aggression of the piano underneath. But now the drums have locked us into a solid backbeat, this now feels more like a song with direction. Whereas at the start we were identifying what this threat was, now that we have the inclusion of the snare and the hi-hat in a solid 4/4 groove, we are now on track to meet that threat. Whether or not we win against this threat or lose is not known, but our cart has been put on the rails towards this threat. We are now accelerating up into another gear of moving towards it. And the song structure is so interesting. You would think that at the start of the song, we're starting with a verse, and that's how I would think of it. And then when Matt enters his head voice, it feels like we've left the verse or we've developed the verse in some way. But this very naturally leads into what becomes the chorus, where Matt is singing, "This is the end of the world." After which we return to the stomping, marching intro at the start of the first verse. And we repeat this structure after the next chorus, not returning to a verse, but instead entering an arpeggiating section, where the drum groove completely changes, and we can hear these synths arpeggiating up a scale, in the same chords that the extension of the verse had. Matt's vocals join this section, but you can't hear any piano in this section. It's completely dropped out, even though it is the primary instrument of this song. It really makes you wonder what this section is actually trying to convey. In the lyrics at the start of the song, we were establishing the threat by declaring an emergency, spreading a sense of urgency, which then led to that backbeat, the acceleration of the presence of the threat, so that we could be pulled through the threat to the other side and survive whatever danger is approaching us. Because if we don't pull through this threat, it is the end of the world. Once that threat is established, the singer says that we need a miracle, something biblical, emphasizing how dire the circumstances must be, as only divine intervention will pull us through this threat as we're facing the end of the world. And then after this bizarre section where the piano leaves, the singer re-enters by saying, "Proclaim eternal victory, come on and change the course of history." Maybe that section is where we're hatching the plan, because it hasn't happened yet. We haven't executed the plan and beaten the threat, but maybe we know what we're going to do now so that we can be pulled through. And I think this is validated by when we return to this arpeggiating section after this verse and chorus, we can hear the piano in that section, which is a very interesting choice. And I've always thought the vocals in this section sound more like a prayer, very airy and high-pitched, and a call to something higher, something literally higher in terms of pitch. And then the song ends with some incredibly dramatic, the most dramatic piano that we have heard in this whole song, where the chords are played moving up the octaves, increasing that drama. And in this section, we are playing lots of different chords. We're playing minor chords and major chords. I think it's very interesting that the turning points in these melodies are on an A major chord, which in musical terms you could say is the opposite of an F sharp minor, being the relative major key, A major would be, of F sharp minor. So we're playing the same chord but showing two different faces of it, if you like. And the song ultimately ends on an F sharp minor chord, resolving to the very first chord we heard in this song. There is a distinct difference in the bass. Whereas the bass was a C sharp in that very first chord we heard, in the very last it is an F sharp, so there is synergy between the melody chord and the tonic in the bass. And the moving up of pitch from C sharp to F sharp in this song indicates to me that there has been a change. Whatever the plan was that was hatched has been put into action, and something has changed as a result, and it's up to the listener to decide what that is. but I think the moving up in pitch shows that there has been a positive change as a result of the action taken. That this song showed us that even if it would take a miracle or something biblical, that can still be achieved. That would be my reading of this song and my understanding of how it ends. The next song is Time Is Running Out. This song is really excellent. The first most notable thing about the song is its bass line. It's quite a tonally ambiguous bass line. It starts off in A minor, where we have an A reaching to the minor third C, and then to the second B, so sounds consistent for A minor so far. And then it plays a D, E flat, and E, so it chromatically climbs from the fourth D up to the fifth E. That E flat is not in key, and it creates an element of tension in this song. Once that E is hit, the next note is an E in the octave below. So quite a big tonal jump there between those notes. And then we climb back up by moving to the F and C, where C is the fifth of F. So we're building the framework, the outer shell of an F triad. But whether or not that is major or minor is a bit unclear. It would be implied to be major, given that we heard an A before. But who knows? This might be a harmonic minor. It's not clear what the tone is of the F and the C. And then we hear the G and the D. So again, the D being the fifth of the G, the shape of the next chord up in the key, and then the G returns us to A, the start of the bass line. So whilst this bass line is clearly based in A minor, we're moving around in the scale of A minor quite strangely. We're moving up and then down and then back up again, all within one phrase, and we're hitting accidental chromatics like the E flat. So something is not really right about this bass line, and that's the tone that it is establishing right off the bat. It's one of unease. With a song like this, I don't feel the need to really explain why it's so good, because everyone knows that this song is really great. Even though there's an eeriness about the bass line, tonally, there is also a suaveness and coolness and smoothness about this song, about the way that the vocals are delivered, about the way that the bass line is played. It heavily reminds me of the vibe that Dark Shines gave off. The drum groove also plays into this with all the hi-hat work, opening and closing. The vocals give off a very interesting vibe as well. The first words are, I think I'm drowning, asphyxiated, and we can hear all the signature Matt Bellamy inhales between every phrase. So his vocal delivery is reinforcing the lyrics that he's saying. He's struggling for air. He feels trapped. There's a desperation to the song. Structurally, the song is not typical either. We have the bass intro, and we have the first verse, which has locked us into a solid groove. But then we have a refrain before we hit the pre-chorus, the "You Will Be the Death of Me" section, where we hear the piano in the background, a different texture. Interesting to point out that we've only heard vocals, drums, and bass, and now some piano in the background. No guitar yet. But that's because we're waiting for the actual pre-chorus. The refrain is there to throw us off. And then when the pre-chorus comes in, we have guitar coming in, a different drum groove, lots of tom work now, but we still have that opening and closing of the hi-hat that we had before. The lyrics in the pre-chorus have a darkness about them. Bury it, I won't let you bury it, I won't let you smother it, I won't let you murder it. Presumably the singer is talking about his love for this person. He has very strong feelings for someone, but he knows that they're doing him harm. He's feeling like he can't breathe. He wants to break the spell that this person has cast on them. Maybe that's quite an accusatory lyric. I want to break the spell you've created, putting all of the onus on the other person, which may be inaccurate when we think of the storytelling. But even though he wants to break the spell, he still wants to play the game. The singer enjoys the fact that this relationship or these feelings aren't doing him any good. He wants the friction, and he knows it will be the death of him. And we have this contradiction in the lyrics, where he says to bury it, but he won't let himself bury it. But again, it's framed from the other person's perspective, as if, I won't let you bury it, as if it's all the other person's fault. And I've always found the framing in this song very interesting because of that reason. And even though the singer probably knows that if they were to dispense with all of these feelings, they'd be better off, he feels totally helpless to stop it. And we have the chorus, a really explosive chorus, such a massive sound. And Matt's vocal delivery really has a great sense of desperation. He's saying his time is running out, You can't push it underground. You can't stop it screaming out. And in the next refrain, he sings, "You will squeeze the life out of me." There is so much drama. Presumably, the singer is not actually in mortal jeopardy, but there is a very high emotional jeopardy. It feels like the end of the world to the singer. The second verse, "I wanted freedom, bound and restricted." Again, we have that contradiction in the lyrics. He wants freedom, but then he goes on to describe what is the exact opposite of freedom. "I tried to give you up, but I'm addicted. Now that you know I'm trapped, sense of elation, you'd never dream of breaking this fixation." Another quite accusatory lyric towards someone, assigning malice or sadism to this person. Again, maybe that's deserved, maybe it's not. The guitar part in this second verse is so incredibly heavy. The tone is just massive. It's a real, proper heavy metal tone. That is not a hard rock guitar tone. Very alternative and very heavy for a song that is so mainstream for them. And after the second chorus, we have the post-chorus. So again, structurally, we're adding stuff in that we're not expecting. And in my opinion, the post-chorus is the reason this song is so iconic. That vocal hook is what is so catchy about the song. That is the bit that sticks in people's heads. And I love how Matt goes into his falsetto right at the end to really build that drama and how it's layered with the tremolo guitar picking underneath. And then we go into a bridge, and this bridge section is really cool. It has a really cool piano part in the background. And then we have another refrain, another pre-chorus, another chorus, post-chorus. And when we have that final falsetto climb that Matt does, we end with some really heavy guitar playing the riff, I guess you could call it, from the second verse to close us out. This song is really great, and there is a really good reason why it is one of their biggest songs. The next song is Sing for Absolution. The first thing that really strikes me about this song is always the bass line. It's really unusual, and it feels like it has so much space in this song to really take the lead. The song opens with piano again. This is the third song in a row that we have heard piano in, and actually that is something about this album which is a consistency. There is piano in every song except for Falling Away With You, Hysteria, Blackout, The Small Print, and Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. All the rest of the songs have piano in some way, which in terms of an overall average for an album is way higher than other Muse albums, certainly higher than Showbiz or Origin of Symmetry. The piano part that underpins this entire song has what I like to call an introductory section and a more developed section. This first section is rooted in F major, I guess we could say, certainly centered around the F at the start of each phrase, and then in the second part it moves down a semitone to be based around E instead. So I think of the chord change as being from F major, or like D minor, I guess if you like, to E major, which is a really cool chord change. In fact, if you are going from F major to E major, it's an entirely chromatic change. You're moving every single thing down by a half step, and the tension that builds across both sections of this melody is really good. And with the way that the piano has been mixed to have so much reverb and so much space, this feels like a really space-age song. And like you're in space, it feels very alien. And the chorus feels a lot more human when the guitar comes in and we hear a more familiar strumming pattern. The chorus has a great vocal melody in it, some really great extended notes that Matt sings. And maybe it's because I have the music video stuck in my head of them being in a spaceship or a rocket ship flying around. But when the solo comes in, it really does sound like a rocket ship is taking off. Maybe it's the guitar tone, maybe it's what I've got in my head already, but that is really what it sounds like. And I love how after the solo, the piano line varies to play an arpeggio instead of the chords. And it does that behind a tremolo guitar solo. And we do that in the final chorus, which then ends. And instead of the song ending there and then, there is a post-chorus, which is the best part of the song. So the song climaxes right at the end. The entire song builds up to the section where Matt sings, "Our wrongs remain unrectified, and our souls won't be exhumed." And especially live, this is the section that really makes Sing for Absolution completely different from any other Muse song. It has so much size, it has so much drama, and it's a really incredible song. I remember I had a family member who I was on a trip with, and we got into a bit of a music discussion because they claimed they were into alternative rock. And they really weren't. They were into like water parks, which like, okay, I'm not against pop, but that's not alternative rock. That is basically just pop. And I was like, look, alternative rock is basically Muse. And he was like, yeah, I don't really like Muse. But he said, you know, if I put together some songs that he would listen to, he would let me know if they were any good or not. And one of the songs that I gave him, because, you know, I'm not going to give him like a super heavy song. I'm not going to give him Fury, that he's just not going to like that. I gave him Sing for Absolution. And you can tell because this was about like 4 years ago and I'm still talking about it. He didn't like Sing for Absolution. And what he said to me was he said that the song is just too weird. And I was like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean it's too weird? And what he said didn't even make any sense and still doesn't to me to this day. But what he said was, if you're going to do weird, I feel like you should just commit to doing weird rather than like try and be cool in one section and then try and be weird in another. And I would just like, if anyone's made it this far into the video and heard that, I'd like a bit of validation for the fact that that opinion is really dumb. Sing for Absolution is incredible, and if it could be described as weird, that is like one of the best things about it. So yeah, I have a bit of history with this song, but I really like it. I think it's great, and I feel the need to prove that. So it'd be really great if everyone just agreed that Sing for Absolution is an incredible song. It wouldn't have made it into the top 10 on the Shepherd's Bush playlist poll if it was rubbish, so either I'm wrong or all Muse fans are wrong, which is, well, not impossible. The next song is Stockholm Syndrome. This is one of the best Muse songs of all time. I feel like the heaviness doesn't really come across in the studio version, but in any live version, literally any of the live versions, but my favourite is the Earl's Court one, this song is so heavy. I haven't heard this song live yet, but I would really love to. There's so much to love about this song. I love the riff. It's so interesting with the hammer-ons and pull-offs. It's essentially just a root, second, and minor third, rooted in C. So we're playing the first 3 degrees of a minor scale. I love when the harmonics are in the intro, and I love how the bass comes in, because when the drums come in after the first guitar riff, they're very bouncy and they've got a lot of energy, and the bass is also quite bouncy as we hear just one extended note at the start of every 2 bars. But then after we repeat the riff again, the bass comes in with repeated notes. And it's really impressive how Chris is able to play this song without a pick, because he plays this fingerstyle really fast and really hard as well. We'll talk about this more in the Hysteria part of the video, but Chris's power in his playing is a signature part of Muse's sound and Chris's style as a bassist. The verses have this chromatic, tremolo guitar part that feels really dire, and the vocals mirror this. Matt's vocal delivery in this song, especially in live performances, is so desperate and there's such a dire tone being established. I love how when we come into the verse as well, the drums change and they have this tom groove, which is building up the tension and energy. And then the drums shift in the second verse to have more of a solid beat. The structure of the song is a bit different because after that intro, we have the first verse, a second verse, which is more intense, a pre-chorus riff part, which is really heavy, but building on the chromatic ideas we heard in the verses. And then we have the first chorus. Now, the chorus of this song is probably the most memorable thing about it, and the chorus is really big, but it's not big because of the same reason that the Hysteria chorus is big or the Newborn chorus is big. We hear basically no guitars. The guitars come out and they are replaced with pianos and especially synthesizers that are arpeggiating up some chord shapes. The synthesizers rise up quite slowly, but then they turn around and fall back down around the middle of the chorus. Another thing that makes the chorus really anthemic is, of course, Matt's singing and the sustained notes he's singing as well. After the first chorus, we then have a reintroduction of the riff, and then a third verse. But instead of there being 2 verses, one to introduce us and one to build up the energy like we had before, instead we just have this third verse, and then we go straight into the pre-chorus riff, and then another chorus. The lyrics of the chorus fit with the song's title. This is the last time I'll abandon you, and this is the last time I'll forget you. I wish I could. Stockholm Syndrome being a condition where someone who is captured develops an affection for their captor. This chorus is speaking to the psychology of the person who is captive. This is the last time I'll abandon you. If they were to leave, they would feel guilty. and this is the last time I'll forget you. I think the fact that it says this is the last time might also indicate that this has happened before. Someone has tried to leave, someone has tried to forget this person, maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, but it's a bit similar to the lyrics of Time Is Running Out, where there is this person or qualities of this person that the singer is drawn to, even if they are harmful to the singer. Ending the chorus with that lyric, I wish I could, indicating the true feelings of the singer. They wish that they could forget, they wish they could abandon, but they can't, they're trapped, which was the whole lyrical theme of Time Is Running Out. Some of the lyrics and the verses are also really interesting. I won't stand in your way. Who is this referring to? Is this referring to the person who is captive? Is it that person who won't stand in the way of what their captor wants because they love them? Or is this the captor who is saying that they won't stand in your way, but then they would say that because they know that the person they have trapped has developed a helpless affection for them? Let your hatred grow. Again, not really sure who this is referring to, but it's probably the captor telling the person they've trapped that they relish the fact that they have trapped them, and that if this person was really able to take agency over their feelings, they would hate what they have become. She'll scream, she'll shout, she'll pray, and she had a name. These are all seemingly methods to try and escape the capture. And the she had a name lyric kind of gives me Citizen Erased vibes when we're referring to the loss of individuality. Whoever it is who has been captured is losing who they used to be. I won't hold you back is very similar to I won't stand in your way. Let your anger rise is very similar to let your hatred grow. And in this second verse we say, we'll fly, we'll fall, and we'll burn, and no one will recall. This is very different to before, where we were describing ways we would try and get attention to avoid or get out of being captured. Now it's like we're talking about what is going to happen now that I am captured. Will fly indicates there'll be something positive, there's hope, but then will fall, so even if it's good, it's not going to last, and will burn, there's a jeopardy, and we know it. And no one will recall is a very interesting line. It's hoping that people won't remember, but we have to ask, what is it that they won't remember? Is it that the person won't remember their previous life or their previous feelings? Because if we've got Stockholm Syndrome going on, where the person develops affection for their captor, that may not be what they want to do, that may not be how they would feel naturally, and that kind of affection only comes out because of the fact they've been captured. So maybe we don't want this person to remember their past life, maybe we don't want the people that they know to remember who they used to be either. No one will recall, so the entire memory of everyone they know shouldn't be aware of what is going on in this song. And the third verse is particularly dark. Look to the stars, let hope burn in your eyes. Looking to the stars has connotations of dreaming, aspiring big, doing things that you would want to do, that you could be proud of. But it seems that the singer wants that aspiration, that hope to burn, to completely disappear. And will love and will hate and will die, all to no avail. There is a recognition that this is a futile exercise. The love will come from the Stockholm Syndrome, as will the hate from the underlying feelings. Maybe the captor hates himself for what he does. Maybe the one who is captive hates their captor without truly knowing it. And will die is a recognition that this behavior is self-destructing. After the second chorus, there is a solo, and the solo is a development of the main riff. In fact, it is literally just the main riff for the first part of the solo, just repeating over and over again, and then it develops in the second half. The solo fits the song very well. It's not very virtuosic, and it doesn't really develop very much, but it is very fitting for the song, and I do like it a lot. Then we have one final chorus, and after that, a very heavy outro riff, and that riff is a half-time version of the main riff, but this time played in heavy chords to see us out. And the heaviest part of this section is when we play the riff, and at the end of the phrase, we have these heavy slides in both the guitar and the bass, which are really sludgy. One of my favorite moments in Muse. So Stockholm Syndrome, one of the heaviest songs they have ever written, even to this day. Even if it's not got the lowest notes or isn't down-tuned to the lowest pitch, there is an emotional heaviness and a natural heaviness to the riffs and the chromatic part of this song. A really excellent song, especially the synth arpeggios in the chorus. The next song is Falling Away With You, and it is a real shame that Falling Away With You was never played live, but at least there is another version of it, which they released as part of the remix. One of the extra tracks was the Falling Away With You acoustic demo, which I really love as well. This chorus would sound so big and so cool live, and I really struggle to believe it, that they never played this live, and it's one of the few songs from this era that never was. Muse had a lot fewer songs back then. This song doesn't seem like it wouldn't translate live, but I guess I'm just having to come to terms with the fact I'll never hear it live, and I'll never hear a live version of Hypochondriac Music either, which is another great song I love, but also never got a live performance, despite seeming like it would translate perfectly live. But it's more understandable in that song's case because that one is a B-side, and this one is an album track. I love the intro to this song and how you can hear the sliding up and down the strings. It immediately gives the song a very intimate feel that we haven't really had from the previous songs. The little steel pan in the background also builds an intimate vibe. I really like Falling Away With You because it feels very sweet and endearing, but at the same time there is a sadness to this song which you can feel, especially in the instrumentals. First of all, the guitar melody that underpins the verse of this song goes on for quite an extended phrase before it repeats. It's characterized by this falling melody, and we would expect this melody to repeat every 4 bars. That's a pretty typical structure, but in Falling Away With You, it lasts for double the amount of time we would expect. We move down some chords, and then at the point we would expect to repeat, we continue to fall down into new chords that do not fit a repeat of our pattern. So the pattern that we do have, that we do repeat, is quite long, and I've always liked that about this song. It's like the melody falls below where you would expect, which kind of fits with the vibe of the song. The song sounds like an uplifting song, but actually under the surface, the song is actually quite sad because it's about something ending. Yet again, another song where lyrically we have a contradiction between hope and despair. The verse starts off with quite a melancholy lyric. I can't remember when it was good. Moments of happiness elude. Maybe I just misunderstood. Those memories of happiness are ones that will never be found because they never happened in the first place. But at the end of the verse, we have more of a positive outlook, more optimistic even in the face of that sadness. So I'll love whatever you become, forget the reckless things we've done. I think our lives have just begun. And then we have the chorus, which is quite a big chorus. It has these falling synth arpeggios, these very rapid synth parts in the background. That's another melody line in this song, which is going downwards in pitch. And the lyrics in this chorus are, I'll feel my world crumbling, my life crumbling, my soul crumbling away, and falling away with you. This song is definitely about the ending of something, the ending of a relationship or a life that the singer had become accustomed to. But based on how the first verse ended, my initial interpretation of this chorus would be, yes, there might be some sadness that something is ending, and ending in such a dramatic way, but it does seem that there is optimism that it can be in service of building something better. The drum pattern in the chorus has a lot of tom work and does a great job at building the intensity, and I love the vocal harmonies with the different layers of Matt's voice at the end of the chorus. It's a surprisingly big chorus and big climax to the chorus for a song most people would describe on this album as more subdued. And then when we enter the second verse, we have an entirely different feeling to the first verse. Whereas that first verse had a very endearing and warm quality about it, this second verse is a little bit more dark. We can hear the distorted tremolo guitar in the background, laying a more moody ambience to this verse. And in this verse, we open with one of my favourite Muse lyrics, which is staying awake to chase a dream. That is such a great contradiction in the lyrics. Tasting the air you're breathing in, how would that even be possible? Again, another contradiction in the lyrics. And then we have the lyric, I know I won't forget a thing. And that's very interesting because that's different to memories I will never find that we heard in the first verse. It seems that the singer hasn't really decided whether or not this relationship was always real or not. And by extension, is the relationship over, or is there still hope that it can continue? But then we have the realization that maybe that's not the case. Promise to hold you close and pray, watching the fantasies decay. Nothing will ever stay the same. But then we're injected with that hope again. All of the love we threw away, all of the hopes we've cherished fade. But then we have that injection of hope again, making the same mistakes again, indicating a proposal to give the relationship another shot. And then we have the second chorus, where the world will crumble away, hopefully to build a better one. And after the last grand, earth-shattering chorus, we fall away, literally, to a very subdued outro, which is the most despairing and darkest moment of the song. And throughout the song, we've had this back and forth between memories I will never find and I know I won't forget a thing. But in the outro, the final lines of the song are all of the love we left behind, watching the flashbacks intertwine, memories I will never find. It seems that we've ended this song on the conclusion that whatever this song is about, presumably a relationship, that is over, and the singer would rather forget about it than be able to remember it. This song is lamenting the fact that it has to end, and what I absolutely love about this song is how it transitions from this despairing outro into Interlude, where the tremolo guitar picks up with that heavy distortion, and we can really hear in Interlude influence from Barber's Adagio for strings in the chords being played and the movement between the chords. We've left behind this relationship, probably reluctantly, and Interlude tells us that where we're going next is not a better place, it is a darker place, and it leads us perfectly into Hysteria, which is probably the biggest song on this album. The first really noticeable thing about Hysteria is obviously its bass line. It's definitely one of the best Muse have ever written, without a doubt. It's absolutely iconic, and I love how very similarly to Futurism, it focuses on a single string at a time for each phrase. The bass line consists of rapid 16th notes. There are no rests at all in the bass line. Every note is the same length, and every beat has a note to be played, whether or not it's an open string or a fretted note. Often Hysteria is described as a difficult bass line, and that is often because of the endurance required to play it, especially fingerstyle. Rapid notes must be sustained throughout the entire verses. The only time we have more sustained notes is during the chorus part, where the bass plays these octave shapes. The bass is very heavily distorted in the intro, and it's actually layered with a synth as well, which gives it a very unfamiliar, very alien feeling. Immediately, this song is not like anything we've heard before. One of my favorite parts of this bass line is when we move up to the D string and play a chromatic rundown on that string. That rundown in particular really does a great job at establishing the tonal ambiguity of the bass line and building tension in the song. Lyrically, this song leads in from Falling Away With You, because where Falling Away With You is attempting to come to terms with the fact this relationship is ending, to take a very surface level interpretation of the lyrics for this song, assuming it's about a relationship, this song would be about the denial of that relationship ending. The entire chorus of this song is based around the idea that the singer wants something and the immediateness of that. I want it now, I want it now, give me your heart and your soul. Obviously quite dramatic and very literally unreasonable demands, but it shows how badly the singer wants that old relationship back and that person to pay attention to them, to show them love and affection, and to want them back. I'm not breaking down, I'm breaking out, last chance to lose control. There is a lot of rage in this song, and the realization that that relationship is over has driven the singer to a state of frenzy, losing control, and the singer elaborates on the kind of things that are happening to their internal psyche in the verses of this song. It's bugging me, grating me, twisting me around, endlessly caving in, turning inside out, holding me, morphing me. These are very visceral descriptions of how the person is becoming unfamiliar to themselves and contorted against their will into someone that they don't recognize, don't really want to be, perhaps, and gives you an idea of the kind of pain you would be feeling if that were to physically be happening to your body. There is also a streak of nihilism to some of the lyrics in this song. At the end of the second verse, the singer talks about how what they're feeling is forcing them to strive to be endlessly cold within. Normally we strive for positive things, for aspirational things, but in this case, the feelings of despair have driven the singer to want to feel emptiness and hopelessness, and to confine being alive to simply a dream. And in the final chorus, the lyrics actually change. I'll feel my heart implode, breaking out, escaping now, feeling my faith erode, which is the final lyric of the song, ending on that very nihilistic note that the pain of the breakup, at least in the immediate aftermath, is so upsetting that the singer's faith in happiness or in love or in that person perhaps has completely eroded. Instrumentally, this song is based around the A harmonic minor scale, and we hear that in the main guitar melody, the one with the bends. We bend up from a B to a C, utilizing the semitone within that scale, and then eventually fall down to an A flat, the sharp 7, an F, and then an E, ending on a chord of E major from the root of A minor, where the sharp 7 where the raised 7th degree of the harmonic minor scale is forming the third of the E major chord, which is a classic Muse chord progression I'll talk more about in Butterflies and Hurricanes. I think the vocal distortion is most obvious in this song. Matt is singing through a number of effects, and I think this is the most iconic use of that distortion over his voice. Another great thing about this song is the solo. The solo is quite predictable in many ways because the second section is just the vocal melody from the chorus. But I think the solo is incredibly fitting for the song, and they do a number of things in the studio version to keep it interesting. The first section is this arpeggio section, which is really fun, and then that leads into the vocal melody section from the chorus. And I think this vocal melody is really strong. It sounds a little bit like a main theme for a movie or a superhero. It has a real soaring quality to it, and in the background of this section, we can hear a lot of layers of other guitar parts that are building a really cool and effective soundscape to immerse you into the sustained notes of the solo itself. And the final really great part about this song is the outro. We do that chromatic rundown from the bass line, but this time on the lowest strings of the bass and on the guitar. We actually hear this earlier in this song, in the lead in to the solo sections, but it's a really great heavy way to end the song, and I love how the drums accent the specific beats on that outro as well in the last version. Throughout this song as well, the drums have been keeping a steady groove, very interestingly using the open and closing hi-hat. If the song wasn't so distorted and it wasn't so aggressive, and if it was a bit faster, that beat would feel very disco, but it works here to build tension in the song. So Hysteria is a really great song, one of the best on the album, and definitely one of their biggest songs for a reason. That bass line will just never get old. The next song is Blackout. What makes this song interesting is actually how the primary instrument can be regarded as the strings in this song. Normally it's the guitar or it's the piano, but in this song the guitar is a supporting instrument. This song is also in 3/4, the only one on the album, and one of the few based around a multiple of 6. So that also gives it a little bit of a unique feel for the album. I love how when the song starts, the guitar comes in and it's acoustic, and it has this flamenco Spanish influence with the tremolo picking. And I like how when the guitar comes back into the song around halfway through, it's playing the same line, or really it's playing these string lines, but it's using the tremolo picking that we heard in the first section, but this time the guitar is heavily distorted. I do have to say, I'm not a big fan of the tone or the way that the tone blends with the rest of the instruments in the second section. The distorted tremolo section is a little bit too piercing and grating with the rest of the song for my liking. I don't think it's as dramatic or impactful as it should be. It sounds a bit too screechy to me. But I love the strings in this song. I love the string lines that are being played. Coming after a very intense song like Hysteria, which after Falling Away With You is dealing with very heavy feelings of anger and despair, Blackout is a welcome break from some of that chaos. It's chaotic in its own way with the way that the distorted tremolo guitar interacts with the strings and the drums drums and bass behind that are quite slow. But overall, the song is a calmer vibe. And lyrically, we are again exploring the theme of loss or of things ending, but the outlook is a bit more detached, or at the very least, it's more mature, more objective. Don't kid yourself, don't fool yourself, this love's too good to last, and I'm too old to dream. This is a very pessimistic lyric. It seems that the singer thinks that their time has passed them by, and even if something good comes along, he is cynical that it will last, and that these kind of things are not for the singer. It feels like the singer is talking from an older perspective to a younger person. It's quite ambiguous because the perspective flips, but especially in the second verse, don't grow up too fast, don't embrace the past. This life's too good to last, and I'm too young to care. And this is what I was talking about when referring to the maturity of the song. There's an ability to look at life or the same problem through two different lenses. Young people might live in the past or not appreciate the time that they have, but instead of immaturity being the thing that makes the person unable to see how much time they have left and seize their life, it is instead cynicism. And the final verse, don't kid yourself, don't fool yourself, this life could be the last and we're too young to see. The thing I like about this song is it feels like very earnest advice. There are these rising and falling strings in the back, which might signify the ups and downs of life, but the overall takeaway from this song is that even if you can't see it, regardless of if you're young or old, you have more time than you think, and you can experience joy and achieve the things that you want to, even if you don't have much time left or think that you don't, before your blackout, referring to your death. The next song is Butterflies and Hurricanes. This song has a lot of really unique elements. It's another song to feature the piano, and the song actually opens with a keyboard, which is pretty unusual for Muse. And it simply opens with some octaves being played on the keyboard. There is no tonality quite yet. The verses of this song, or I guess the chorus, because they're kind of the same thing, are based around a subdivision of 3-3-2. That's how our 8 eighth notes are divided up, with accenting on the 1st, 4th, and the 7th notes. The chord progression used is one called the lament bass. The song has a very unusual chord progression. There is actually a chromatic walk down, so the bass note is largely held in D, which is the root of our key of D minor, and the melody moves down from D to E flat to C to B to B flat to A. And when we compare the position of our first chord, D minor, to the position of our last chord, A major, this is a very common Muse songwriting technique. We've already seen them use this kind of chord progression, using the sharp 7th degree of the minor scale to build a major chord to transition back into the root chord. We saw this in Space Dementia, where we had the opening chord of E minor, and the last chord of that chord progression is B major. We see it here with D minor going to A major. We saw it in Newborn with E minor and B major, and we will see it in the future in the song Resistance, which most famously uses the lament bass chord progression moving down from A minor to G major to F major to E major. It's a very classical sounding chord progression, and I personally love it a lot. It is my favorite kind of chord progression. Another thing about Butterflies and Hurricanes is that the string parts are actually quite nuanced. There's a lot of counterpoint going on, and instead of it simply being a string section playing one melody, it sounds like we have more of an expanded string section. We have some violin, sounds like violas as well, possibly cellos, each playing their own phrases, or at least being grouped together, so the violins will play a part and the violas will play a separate part, maybe with the cellos. That's how it's sounding to me, and I always really like that. And this is where Absolution's classical influences are the most strong. I think in Origin of Symmetry, the classical influences are quite obvious from a songwriting perspective in the way that the melodies are written, but the classical influences in Absolution seem to be a lot more strings based or in accompaniments to the songs rather than forming the basis of the song like they do in Origin of Symmetry. And another really interesting thing about Butterflies and Hurricanes is the tone of the song. The song is quite an uplifting one for once. One of the only, if not the only, uplifting song in Absolution. section. There is a great sense of drama, which comes through in the strings. The song definitely has a grandness and it has scale, but the message of the song is positive, or at least it presents itself in that way. When we look at the lyric, it can be a bit more difficult to interpret, or at least it presents itself in that way. When we look at the lyrics a bit more closely, it can be a bit more difficult to determine if this song is a positive song or a negative song disguised as a positive one. Lyrics like "change everything you are and everything you were" have a negative and sad connotation. Why would I want to give up my personhood, my memories, what makes me up? But maybe that's because who you are isn't great. There's lyrics later that say, "Best, you've got to be the best. You've got to change the world and use this chance to be heard." Very uplifting, and the way that the strings climb during that section really gives you a sense of hope when listening to it. It's like a motivational song, ending with "your time is now," empowering, emboldening you to take action that will lead to good things, good changes, good outcomes. And other lyrics like "your number has been called, fights and battles have begun. You may not have been ready to take on this responsibility, but it is your time. Other people have called on you and are relying on you, or maybe no one you know has called on you." I always imagine a Hunger Games scenario where you're selected whether you like it or not, and you have to rise to the challenge. This idea that you are maybe not ready to take on the responsibility but need to, I think is backed up by how the song just explodes from the quieter section into the louder section. You may not have been ready for that, but you're here and you need to see this through. There's other lyrics like "revenge will surely come, your hard times are ahead." The hard times are ahead part is easy to interpret. There is going to be hardship and you need to power through that hardship. I've never been so sure on the "revenge will surely come" lyric, but I think it's advice that if you're seeking revenge or whatever struggle you are currently encountering, that will be resolved in time, but now there is a bigger challenge to overcome. And during this final section of, I guess what we could call the chorus, the chords change slightly. We move between B flat major and D minor, and then our chords climb upwards to end the chorus in a very dramatic way. And the chorus ends with some quite heavy riffing, certainly in live versions of this song, on the guitar. So once we're done with the riffing, we're sort of led astray into a longer, more extended section by the drums, in particular with the hi-hat, and the piano starts playing these high notes, arpeggiating a chord shape in the highest section of the piano, before tumbling down into a virtuosic piano solo, very Rachmaninoff inspired. That influence from Origin of Symmetry still clearly present here. The piano blends with the strings. There are these sweeping arpeggios and violent octaves being played. And what I think this solo represents is the moment. And what I mean by that is this song has been calling on someone to take action, put themselves out there. Their time has come so they can have their moment. And whatever that is, I think this piano solo is meant to represent the beauty of that moment, how incredible it can be, and how incredible it can be by being different to everything else. The song then ends with a bridge and a final chorus, which I guess you could interpret as your personal development journey is still ongoing. There is still stuff to do. You can do even better. But I like to think of it as a victory lap. We had that moment and now we're celebrating it with one final chorus before the song ends. I think Butterflies and Hurricanes is a really ambitious song. It's quite progressive in its structure. It's not normal to have a random piano solo in the middle of a hard rock song. And it's a nice break from the really dark and oppressive songs, which I obviously love, but a moment of optimism in this album is definitely welcome. The next song is The Small Print. I think this song is quite an unusual one for Muse. It's a shame they don't really play it live anymore, because certainly live in the chorus there were these incredible backing vocals from Chris, and I think the chorus is really big and really deserving of a stadium. But the reason it's unusual is because it's got a punk energy about it. The way that the snare is being hit all of the time, very fast, very frequently, gives the song a lot of drive and a lot of energy that I can't really think that we've heard much before or since outside of newborn. And the riff is quite singular. It's hard to think of other Muse songs that sound similar. Probably the Cave riff is the most similar to this, but even to this day, the small print is still very unique. And I absolutely love the energy and drive in the verses. They are my favourite part of the song. And the way the verses explode into the chorus is super aggressive. It gives me real hyper music vibes. And there are some really underrated short little solos in this song which are unfortunately overlooked and forgotten. But there's a lot to like about this song. I don't think it's the best by any means, but it's far from the worst. And it's got a lot going for it. It's a really good song. The definitive version of the small print is the Live at Earl's Court 2004 version. So if you haven't been sold on this song already, definitely listen to that version and then see if your mind changes, because I know it did for me when I first heard that version. The next song is Endlessly. This is a really nice song. It's a very calming song, very chill, especially for this album and especially coming straight after the small print. I've always thought it's very interesting how the song opens with ghost notes on the snare and then immediately transitions into a more simplified drum backbeat. You can still hear the ghost notes creep in, but the jazzy influence is a lot more dialed back once the keyboard enters. There's a lot of atmospheric elements about this song and lots of things that creep in, like you hear little tremolo guitar parts in the verse that come in the background. And even though Endlessly is more of a subdued song, it still has energy and it still has a lot of bounce to it. There are some really cool parts instrumentally. I love the string parts in the chorus and the way that they fall, especially the end of the chorus. The chorus also has two halves to it. It has the first part, the hopelessly, I'll love you endlessly, which repeats. But then it has the second part when it goes into, but I won't give you up, I won't let you down, almost a rickroll, and I won't leave you falling. And then you'd expect, based on the length of the chorus before, for it to end roughly around that line, but it just keeps going. I won't leave you falling if the moment ever comes. And then we return to the verse. So the chorus does extend for longer than we'd expect. It isn't a typical chorus structure. And I love how open the synths feel in the chorus, especially the final chorus when we bring in the organ, which sounds really big in the live versions. And I really like the lyrics to this song. There's a part of me you'll never know, the only thing I'll never show. That's a great lyric. The song seems to be about an unconfessed love. That seems to be my interpretation of it. The part of the singer that this person doesn't know about is the fact that they hopelessly will love that person endlessly. And the second verse is really unusual. It's plain to see, it's trying to speak, cherished dreams forever asleep. And I've always found that to be very interesting. It's plain to see, it's trying to speak. We have this idea that the singer's love for this person is obvious, plain to see, but they are trying to hide it because it's the one thing they'll never show. And I never knew what he meant by it's trying to speak. Is he referring to himself as an object? Is he referring to the love itself, which seems more likely? Even though the singer's love is obvious, there is something preventing it from being said to this person, which could be so many things, and that means those cherished dreams will forever be asleep. It seems like the conclusion of this song is that the love won't be confessed. And I've always found it interesting how you can cherish a dream, because normally you cherish a memory, something that had happened. But there's this idea that the singer is so wrapped up in their head about this person. They've imagined all of these futures. They have dreamt of a life with this person and cherished that idea so much. But they'll forever be asleep because the singer is too scared or too embarrassed or whatever it is to show that love. I get a lot out of Endlessly and I really enjoy it. A very good song and a very welcome song on such an aggressive album. The next track is Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. And to be entirely honest, this song has never really been for me. There are people who absolutely love this song, and I really wish I was one of those people, but this song just doesn't click for me. I'm not really sure what it is. I quite enjoy the verses. I think the way we have this open strumming in the first verse and this palm muting in the second verse is an interesting way to vary it up, but I've honestly never been a fan of the chorus. I don't think it's very catchy, and I don't really like the singing at the end of the chorus. I think the problem ultimately is the chord progression that this song is based around. It just seems like the progression in the verse doesn't go anywhere. And the verse is one of the better parts. It builds up into the chorus, and once we have the chorus, it's just like an exclamation that dying scares the hell out of the singer. But I'm just left thinking, so what? There's very little I can take from this song and get out of it. And so there's this repeated feeling in this song of starting off to an interesting start, but then ultimately being let down. The verses start off interesting and they build decently, but then the chorus is a letdown. The solo starts off really cool and interesting, but then doesn't go anywhere and we just go straight back into the chorus. I really wish I could like this song as much as others do, but for me, this is definitely the weakest on the album. It's the shortest song, only 3 minutes and 11, and I think it just speaks to that fact that this song doesn't go anywhere. There is very little to get out of this song for me. I've never been able to click with it, and this one just isn't for me. This might sound quite extreme, but in terms of enjoyment, I genuinely would put Thoughts of a Dying Atheist right at the bottom of the Muse songs we've re-listened to in Showbiz, Origin of Symmetry, and Absolution. I like all of the songs on Origin of Symmetry. I like all of the songs on Absolution, except for this one, really. And so the only company this song has, at least at the moment, excluding the B-sides, are the songs that I don't particularly vibe with from Showbiz, which would be stuff like Philip and Overdue. I think this song, in terms of my enjoyment, is very similar to Philip, actually. I think that's a pretty good comparison, although I'd probably say I like Philip slightly more than this song. I'm probably just digging myself more of a hole by doubling down on the fact that I don't really like this song, but what is the point of reviewing this album if I'm not going to be totally honest about the fact that I don't like this song? I like the rest of them. I've built up enough good karma. I'm very happy to spend all of it on this song. The next song is Ruled by Secrecy, and this is the final song on the album. Whereas some fans would say that Thoughts of a Dying Atheist is an underrated Muse song, in my opinion, Ruled by Secrecy is the real underrated gem on this album. There are other underrated songs on here, as we've already gone through, but Ruled by Secrecy has something special. And when I listened to this album in depth for the first time about 5 years ago, it was one of those songs that really stuck out to me then, and so has continued to have a special place in my appreciation of Muse. I love how it's in 6/8. I love the contrary motion in the two hands, the right hand moving down the C minor scale from C and the left hand moving up. 6/8 is a time signature that is associated with perpetual movement. It's one that sets you off and then keeps you going, sustaining the motion. And that's how this song feels. This song feels like the events of the plot are in motion and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And I've always found the lyrics to be very interesting in this song. Repress and restrain, steal the pressure and the pain, wash the blood off your hands, this time she won't understand. There's this idea that the singer has done something unforgivable, or something no one will be able to understand, something that involves them to wash the blood off their hands after they've done it. The chorus, change in the air and they'll hide everywhere, no one knows who's in control. So immediately, I'm getting the idea that whatever action the singer has taken is maybe an action they wouldn't have wanted to take, but they are influenced or controlled or coerced by whoever is in control. The second verse, you're working so hard and you're never in charge. There's a futility to work, to a menial job that demands so much from you, yet there is nothing in return. Maybe this is referring to the social contract. The idea that if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. You can buy yourself a house, you can buy yourself assets. But in this world, you work hard and you're not going to receive a promotion. You're not going to be able to live that life. Your death creates success. Your work does not create success, simply your death. Rebuild and suppress those feelings of your doubt in the system. Maybe this is whoever is in control reasserting their control over the singer. And then we have that chorus again. Change in the air, they'll hide everywhere, no one knows who's in control. Change in the air may be thinking about a revolution. If we impose some sort of change to the way of life, the outcome is not that these people who are in control will be held to account or that the system will change. The people in control simply hide. They evade capture. They evade the change. And no one ever finds out who they are. They are never held accountable. And after this second chorus, we have an explosive piano section. It's a very melodically static solo. With a piano, you have so many options. You can play so many different keys. You can go in so many different directions. Yet the chords that are played are very close together, and the melody you can hear is sort of contained within a chord shape. It's a C minor shape, and our fingers furthest right are the ones playing the melody, whilst the rest of the fingers play the same chord chord shape. I think this is supposed to represent some sort of revolution, some attempt to impose this change, but the change has one hand tied behind its back. We're trying to break out of this chord shape, but we can't quite. We're pretty firmly rooted inside of it, but the dynamics of the playing show the passion and the emotion of how badly we would like to break out of the system. Ultimately, we don't really go anywhere as a result of that, and we return to C minor and we return to the verse melody that we heard before, repeating the chorus this time, and we still haven't found these people who are in control. We still don't know who they are, and so the song becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. This song predicted that change would not be effective, and I feel like by the end of the song that claim is validated. We tried to change something but ultimately end up playing the same melody that we did at the start of the song. Nothing really changed. And that's why I really love this song. I'm able to get so much meaning out of this in a way that I just can't with Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. These are the kind of Muse songs that I really prefer. Songs that are a bit more abstract, atmospheric, and creative. The last song to talk about on this album is Fury. This is the bonus track, and to be honest, I really don't know why it's a bonus track, because this is one of my favorite Muse songs ever. Everything about this song is epic. This song is so heavy. It has such a heavy bass line. The opening melody is based off of the A harmonic minor scale. I love how in the studio version we're using the whammy pedal, and we're using that on each note to give the melody a really unique sound. And I love how in live versions it varies between tremolo picking or using the whammy pedal to be making some really screechy noises with that melody, like live at the Wilton, like in live at the Royal Albert Hall. I love the use of the ride cymbal in the verses. It gives those verses kind of a Bulls on Parade vibe. And the absolute highlight of this song is the chorus. The chorus with the double picking, arpeggiating all these chords is so good. It's such a long chorus as well. It really takes up a lot of time. But even though it's long, there aren't that many lyrics to it. Those being, breathe in deep and cleanse away our sins. I really love the religious overtones to this song, and I feel like the subject matter about life after death and about there being a God really fits and resonates in this song in a way that it just didn't for something like Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. I love the lyric that they'll pray that there's no God. I've always thought that's an incredible lyric, praying that there isn't a God to punish us and make a fuss. The singer isn't scared of the fact that there is no God and there's nothing after death, which is kind of what Thoughts of a Dying Atheist is looking at. But instead, the singer is scared that if there is a God, they will face judgment and possibly a punishment even worse than death, which is way more interesting. The second verse is really interesting. It's not clear whether or not the singer is in favor of religion or not. Cracks healing up, future soul forgive this mess. It's very interesting that the singer is turning to his future self rather than God to forgive him. And it's unclear whether or not to heal up the cracks we are rejecting religion or accepting it. And the lyric, you waste 20 years and wind up alone demented. Is this 20 years wasted because it was devoted to religion? And then after 20 years, one decides to revoke their religion, and as a result loses their family networks, their social circles. Or maybe the interpretation is that you waste 20 years outside of religion, and then when you realize that you need to turn to God, that realization is so contrary to your worldview that it dements you and drives you insane. After the second chorus, we enter a really heavy section, which is a variation on the bass line, which is such a cool bass line. And then we re-enter the solo moment, which especially live is incredibly impactful and epic. And then we close out with one final chorus and then another heavy post-chorus. I love Fury. It's one of my favorite Muse songs, certainly in my top 10, probably in my top 5, and it's technically a B-side. It isn't even on this album, which is such a shame. But it doesn't really matter because I can listen to it whenever I like. And one of the things I own is a 7-inch single of Sing for Absolution that has obviously Sing for Absolution on one side and it has Fury on the other side. And it is definitely one of the coolest things that I own relating to Muse. So, those are my thoughts on all of the songs from Absolution. I also want to mention some B-sides. There's 2 original B-sides for Absolution. One of them is on the Time Is Running Out single, which was The Groove. This has feelings of old Muse. It has a very chromatic riff. It sounds very much like a B-side. It sounds a bit like Ashamed or Agitated, in my opinion, in the way the riff is constructed. It's not as aggressive as those songs. It's a little bit slower, but it sounds nothing like Origin of Symmetry, maybe except hyper music, and it doesn't sound like anything on Absolution. So it's a real taste of old Muse, Showbiz era B-side Muse. But the other B-side is Eternally Missed on the Hysteria single. The thing that's very interesting about this song is it's one of the earliest in Absolution that was written, and Matt was very sure that it was going to be a single at first. But then it didn't even make it onto the album and ended up being the Hysteria B-side. And I do really like this song, but I think if it had been put on Absolution, unlike Fury, which towers above most of the other tracks, Eternally Missed does feel a little bit like an unfinished project or something that has a more restricted appeal. It's 6 minutes long. It's very interesting because it repeats different sections like the verses in different ways. The most weird thing about the song is the reversed note section, which I really like, but is nowhere near as accessible as the singles that ended up being released on this album. I think the chorus of Eternally Missed is really big and really great, and I'm very glad that they played it in the By Request show in Paris in 2018. Do check out that live version if you haven't, because it's really good. I also really love the bass tone in this song, especially when it first comes in. It's got like a wah signal on it, or it's really overdriven. I'm not sure what the bass effects are because I don't really know much about bass effects, but the phaser sound on it is really cool and really fits the song. The song has a really weird vibe, but I think that works for it. And I think it was better for this song that it was a B-side, but that doesn't take away from how much I like it and how much I like when Muse do weird things, or at least weird things in this vein, because they have made weird things that aren't within my vein of interest. But this song definitely is, so absolutely worth mentioning. And it's very interesting to imagine how Absolution might have turned out if they had committed to this being a single and then developed the rest of the album around the sound of Eternally Missed. I think they ultimately went in the right direction, but it would be very interesting to imagine how that whole album would sound, because I imagine it would sound a lot weirder than the album we got. This video took a lot longer to get out because it turned out I had a lot more to say on each song from Absolution than I originally anticipated. So, is this the best album? Is it better than Origin of Symmetry? That's a really hard question to answer. I think the way I would look at it is, if I were to choose my favorite album, I would choose Origin of Symmetry. I think there is a consistency, certainly about the world that is constructed, the soundscape that is consistent across all of the Origin of Symmetry songs, that I really buy into. One of this album's strengths in Absolution is its variety. It offers you so many different songs, and there is definitely a lot of creativity in this album. I feel like it's very easy to categorize this album into different sections. There's heavier songs like Stockholm Syndrome, Fury, Hysteria, Time Is Running Out, The Small Print, and then there's these more piano-oriented songs like Sing for Absolution, Butterflies and Hurricanes, Ruled by Secrecy, Apocalypse Please, and then we have gentler songs like Blackout, I guess Thoughts of a Dying Atheist, Endlessly, Falling Away With You. And there's these 3 distinct groups of songs, and the album works because it is a variety pack of music. But I would prefer to listen to Origin of Symmetry because all of the songs have a similar identity sonically, and that's just me personally. If you really like the fact that there's so much variety in Absolution, then of course Absolution is going to be your favorite, but I think you could probably say Absolution might be the better album. It has a better mix, it probably has a better variety of music, and it may even be more creative in many ways. But in terms of preference, Origin of Symmetry is my favorite album. But who knows, maybe all of this is irrelevant because when we get to Black Holes and Revelations, that'll just be better than both of these. And honestly, I would love nothing more than for that to be the case. I love changing my mind and being proven wrong, so I'm really looking forward to listening to Black Holes and Revelations. So to rank the album now, At number 13 at the bottom, I'm going to put Thoughts of a Dying Atheist, which really isn't a surprise if you've listened to the whole review. At number 12, I'm unfortunately going to have to put Endlessly. I'm not happy about that, but I really don't see another way to rank this album. At number 11, we have Blackout, because that song, compared to Endlessly, it has better strings. I think it achieves the ambient, relaxed song a little bit better. I mean, they're both going for different things, and I've already talked about each of them at length, and it's obvious I really like both of them, but I think Blackout has the edge. At number 10, we have Ruled by Secrecy. At number 9, there's The Small Print. At number 8, I would put Falling Away With You. At number 7, I'd put Apocalypse Please. Number 6, Butterflies and Hurricanes. Number 5, Sing for Absolution. Number 4, Time Is Running Out. Number 3, Hysteria. Number 2, Fury. And number 1, Stockholm Syndrome. So there you go. That is really hard to rank. That was incredibly difficult. And seeing them all laid out like that looks so harsh. Like Ruled by Secrecy at 10 just looks wrong, but I think this is the best way to rank this. So if you agree, if you disagree, let me know. Thank you for all the support on the Muse content recently. It has been great, and there is only more to come. I'm only on album 3. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, because it helps the video get out there and it helps the channel promote other content. And of course, subscribe so that you don't miss Muse content.